Welcome. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Momentum TV. I'm Robert Green, your host. Happy today to welcome Christopher Robinson, one of our students in biomedical engineering. Christopher has recently been inducted, one of only 8 students, into the Bagley College Student Hall of Fame for this year. And he was also a recent recipient of the Mississippi Engineering Society Outstanding Engineering Senior at Mississippi State Award. Christopher, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Good. Tell me, how did you come to be a student at Mississippi State?
It's actually kind of a funny story. Mississippi State ended up being the only school that I applied to. So I was really interested. I did my college search process a little bit backwards than most people would do theirs. I looked at all the different schools and I had some criteria that I was thinking about. I wanted to be in a lab as soon as I could, and I wanted a school that was very strong in the sciences, and that led me to Mississippi State. And actually, my dentist was a Mississippi State grad, and he gave me my first cowbell, so that kind of sealed in the deal for me.
Well, that's my kind of dentist. So you're majoring in biomedical engineering. Mm-hmm. Why did you choose biomedical out of all the majors we have?
So I am pre-med, so I definitely am planning to go to medical school long term. And one thing that I really want to think about with the engineering background is how to solve problems. And I want to learn how to solve problems in that biological context. And so that's what really drove me to biomedical engineering.
Well, you're my kind of guy, because in addition to having a major in engineering, you also have a minor in political science. Now, that is not a common combination, but I think it's a great one. Tell me, what developed your interest in political science? Why did you choose to minor in that?
So early on in my college career, I started thinking about the types of work that I was doing in the lab and different medical technologies and things. And one thing that really bothered me was that how can we get people to be able to have access to these things and be able to afford these things? So I decided to minor in political science so I could have a little bit more of the skill set to work on policy problems and those types of things so that we could make those medical technologies more accessible to all people.
So have you enjoyed that minor in addition to the major?
I really have. It's been a really good supplement to my engineering program. It's given me a lot more, to think in the social science framework and also bring some of my engineering skill set to the political science realm. So it's been a really neat experience.
Okay. Well, good. So I know you're also a member of our Shackles Honors College, and this summer you're going to study in Oxford, England, not Mississippi. So tell us a little bit about that program and what you're going to study over there and what you hope to get out of it.
So I'm going to be spending 6 weeks at the University of Oxford this summer. I'm taking 2 primary courses, one on C.S. Lewis, which is taught by Dr. Snyder, who's in Honors College, and also be taking a course with an Oxford faculty member called Social Epidemiology. So in that program, I'm hoping to really learn how these things such as policy affect the social determinants of health and things such as that. In the C.S. Lewis course, we'll read Chronicles of Narnia, as you imagine, and also kind of see some of the places where C.S. Lewis did his own writing. So it's a really nice trip to be able to go and see the context in which these things were written and just be in a different environment.
Okay, I know that will be interesting. I love to read C.S. Lewis as well. So you mentioned going to see where C.S. Lewis did his writing. So I've got to ask you, I noticed one of the things that came out during your interview for the Student Hall of Fame is you were also a writing tutor for the college. And I understand you were the first writing tutor because you so impressed our writing instructors. Where did you find this love for writing? And tell us, what is your process? How do you go about writing? Why do you like to write? It's not something most engineers like to do.
I would agree, especially for me in high school. I was one of those typical engineering types where every writing assignment just seemed to be a pain. I kind of questioned, why was I doing this? And my 10th grade English teacher, she really harked on to us about writing, and we had these 11 deadly sins of writing. And I think learning those from that age really got my writing fine-tuned in those different types of ways. I think it's important also to note that within science, being able to communicate your ideas and things is very important. And so realizing that really drove me to try to continue to craft my writing and get it better and better. But I think the thing that I've enjoyed the most about writing is being able to just, express these different ideas that sometimes you may not be able to refine as much when speaking. So when you write, you can really refine what you're trying to say. So that's one of the things I really enjoyed.
Okay. Do you write just for pleasure or write mainly just for assignments?
Right now, I've mainly been writing just for assignments, but I do go through periods of time where I'll write these, just like scientific style papers, just kind of organizing my thoughts around topics that kind of will hopefully drive my research going forward in the future.
So one of the things I like to tell students about writing is to look at it more as a process rather than a product. Mm-hmm. So do you use writing to sort of help work through ideas and concepts and get your thoughts organized?
Most definitely. It really is a process. One thing I always recommend is to start really raw. Just get all of your ideas out on paper and you have them physically there to look at and then kind of, you know, construct and craft those to be a little bit more refined. So that really helps with that process.
Yeah. Well, Christopher, I also understand you're a first-generation college student. And we have several of those on campus, and always happy to have those. So what really stirred your interest or piqued your interest in coming to college, you know, without having family that had been before?
Mm-hmm. So my parents most definitely drove me in this direction. So growing up as a child, I always had a deep interest in science. And I knew I wanted to have a career around science, and that's one of those things that college definitely helps with. My mother is very strong and more so like the English and writing side, and my dad's a very math-oriented person. So having both of those skill sets kind of given to me from them really encouraged me to go forward to college to say, okay, I want to apply science in these types of ways. So I think them motivating me and just thinking about what type of career I wanted to go into really drove me to college.
So you're kind of being both your mother and your father by doing writing and engineering.
That's what I always like to think.
That's interesting. Did being a first-generation college student, has that presented any challenges for you?
I would say it's definitely been a unique experience in the sense that a lot of my friends, they have parents that have been or, you know, are Mississippi State alumni, and they grew up in the Mississippi State environment. So coming into Mississippi State, not necessarily having that, you know, family legacy history, it's been really welcoming to me. So I will say a lot of my, you know, challenges as a first generation student have been accounted for from just like the openness Mississippi State has shown me. So.
Okay. What advice, if any, would you have for other first generation students coming not only to college, but particularly to engineering?
The thing I would say is don't be afraid to seek mentorship. That's been something that's helped me a lot going throughout college. But yeah, really just make sure you ask questions and different things. Anytime you have a concern, you know, let that concern be known and let someone help you in that sense. And just because you're the first doesn't mean that, you know, your pathway has to be necessarily, you know, more stressful and those types of things. Just try to be yourself and enjoy. Don't feel a lot of pressure of having to be, you know, more than you are.
So I know a lot of students get concerned and are uptight and how do I find a mentor? What was your process? How did you go about finding your mentors here?
So I knew early on that I wanted to get involved in research. And so I went on a department website, I think my senior year of high school actually, and I looked at all the research that's been in the department. And the research of Dr. LaShawn Simpson really hit me. And I was like, okay, I want to reach out. So as soon as I came on campus, I sent her an email and was like, hey, I'm really interested in your research. Can we have a conversation? And that kind of began that mentoring trip there in that sense. And also within the Honors College, I've been mentored by several people, especially Dr. Don Schaefer. He's mentored a lot, and he kind of helps me with connect other people. So,
yeah, I know we had Dr. Simpson on an episode a few back, and she's very interested in students and talked about the importance of mentoring. So tell us about the kind of research you've been doing. Particularly, I understand you're also writing an honors thesis before you graduate. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What got you interested in it?
So the research that I'm doing right now is using the protein fetuin A to prevent vascular calcification. Heart disease, which is kind of related to vascular calcification, is one of the leading causes of death in the world, actually. So it's a major problem. A lot of the health disparity work that I'm interested in as well revolves around cardiovascular disease because a lot of different policies can cause cardiovascular disease. So the work that I'm specifically doing in the lab is using this protein to prevent vascular calcification, and we're trying to package it into a drug delivery molecule to be able to give that to patients to alleviate those calcifications.
Sounds interesting. One of the things that came out that I think we all were impressed with and liked about you when we interviewed you for the Hall of Fame was the work you've been doing with the children at the J.L. King Center. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what kind of things you do and what you get out of it and what you hope the children get out of it?
So the primary thing that I do at the J.L. King Center is that I help with homework after school. That was how it started. So I came in my freshman year, second semester. I knew I was really strong in math. I know math's one of those subjects that a lot of people struggle with. And that opportunity opened itself through the Biomedical Engineering Association. And so because of that, I got to get in and I got to help the children with their mathematics. And from that, I became kind of a mentor in a sense, because a lot of the kids I could see myself in. You know, a lot of children still have that like childhood wonder with just the natural environment and science. One thing I always kind of joke about, we'll go play in the ditch and look for different little animals and things like that. So being able to see the children and really enjoying and engaging with science on that level really brings me a lot of joy and reminds me why I got into science. So I think that's one thing that helps keep me motivated going through college.
Yeah, I remember you said part of what got you into engineering in the interview was you were always the kid playing out in the ditch, and you like to take the children out in the ditch as well and see what's growing out there. You also done some work for Global Brigades. Can you tell us about that?
So that was a 9-day trip. We went to Honduras. The first 3 days we saw patients within the clinic. The second day, we got to dig trenches to bring access to water to our local host village. And on the last 3 days, we built a sanitation station, which was essentially, restroom and also a clean water facility onto the homes. I think it was a really good experience because I got to shadow local Honduran doctors as they took care of their communities. So really getting to see those local interactions and applying some of the solutions that they've done to alleviate from poverty and how to apply to some of those in the U.S. was a really neat experience for me.
So I know you're ultimately planning to go to medical school, but you also have an interesting plan for a year before you go to medical school. Can you tell us about that? What are you going to do that year?
So I'm hoping to work on the Hill, Capitol Hill, work in some capacity, either in a committee or in a office. So in that capacity, I'm really just trying to get some health policy experience and learn how the sausage gets made, as they say, for health. And I think I can take that skill set to medicine and kind of understand better how to see patients and how the policy up the line is going to affect the patients long term.
Okay. So with that background in medical school, what are your, tell me about your long-term career goals. I know you've got some ambitious ones.
Some of my dream kind of goals I think about is like the CDC director position is a really interesting space. Also, over Health and Human Services, Secretary of Health and Human Services, really interesting spaces for me. I think the thing that really drives me the most with leadership in those types of positions is that you're able to kind of have your hand in a bunch of different projects. So you'll get to have the policy side with Medicare, Medicaid policy, but you'll also get to be involved with work with NIH and the basic science types of things. So I think those positions are really interesting because they allow me to mix both of my major skill sets.
Well, I know you have several people here who are confident that you will achieve one, if not both, of those goals at some point. So you think having that engineering and that political science background is really going to help you make a difference in people's lives. So I think that's great. So we got another minute or so in that time. Why don't you tell me what's your favorite book? I know you're going to be reading C.S. Lewis this summer, but what are you reading now for fun?
My favorite book of all time is probably Being Mortal. It was written by Atul Gawande. That book really impacted my view on health disparities and those types of things. That was my first time to really understand the role that a physician could play in the policymaking process and thinking about health outside the individual patient interaction. So that's probably my favorite book in that sense because it's really driven a lot of my career goals.
Okay. And I'm sure reading also helps you. And I always said, if you want to learn to write better, read more.
It does.
So I'm sure that's helping you as well. Well, Christopher, I really want to thank you for joining us here. Congratulations on your recent honors and awards. I know you'll enjoy Oxford this summer. You're going to be very successful, and I know you're planning on applying to several really prestigious medical schools. And I have no doubt you'll probably get accepted into many of those. But it's been a pleasure having you with us here today, and as well as a student in the Bagley College of Engineering. We wish you best of success in the future. So I want to thank you all for joining us for this episode of Momentum TV. I look forward to talking to you next month.